Good morning, everyone. Seems like we have a crowd starting to form, and we're going to wait a little bit longer, just a couple minutes, 1 minute or two, to see if any more people trickle in, and then we'll get started. All right, for those that just joined, we're going to wait 1 more minute to see if anyone else shows up, and then we will get started. I appreciate everyone taking the time to join. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. We're really glad you're here. We know there's been a lot of interest in Project Tango, and we appreciate the opportunity to walk you through the details. My name is Patrick Eiler, and I'll be kicking off today's webinar. Before we get started, a few housekeeping notes. This meeting is being recorded and will be available online at centralparkcommercecenter.com. At the bottom of your screen, you will see a Q&A box. You can submit questions at any time throughout the presentation. We'll be collecting those as they come in, and we will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end. We've also received a number of questions in advance through the website and Facebook, so we'll be working those into the discussion as well. Next slide, please. So to start, we want to set the tone here today. Since our last webinar, we've been busy. We've a lot of work has continued behind the scenes. We've continued meeting with community members, reviewing technical information, and completing independent studies that looked closely at the topics that we've heard matter most to the community. This afternoon, we'll share those findings, provide updates on the project, and answer your questions so you leave with the most current information available. Next slide, please. If you joined us for our last webinar, thank you for coming back. Rather than repeating everything we went through in April, we'll provide a brief overview of the project before focusing on what's new and what's happening since then. So, next slide. And before we get into the details, we are going to start off with a short video that provides an overview of the project.
Every time you send a message, stream a show, or check your bank account, you're relying on something most people never see, a data center. You may have heard about a proposed data center in western Palm Beach County. Here's a clear look at what it is, how it works, and what it means for the community. Central Park Commerce Center is a planned industrial and employment site along Southern Boulevard. Approved for industrial use since 2016, part of the site is now being considered for a modern data center known as Project Tango. So what exactly is a data center? From the outside, a data center looks like a typical office building. Inside, it's a secure facility that stores and processes digital information we rely on every day. Think of it as the behind-the-scenes hub supporting everything from apps and streaming to emails, remote work, emergency services, and financial systems. They provide critical infrastructure that keeps our digital world running, reliably and securely. Just as important as what a data center does is where it's located. This site was selected because it is already approved for industrial use and located next to major existing infrastructure, including Florida Power and Light's West County Energy Center, regional substations, and major transmission lines. Placing this facility near existing power infrastructure helps it operate efficiently and avoids the need for building new infrastructure in other areas. Another important consideration is how the site relates to its surroundings. It is separated from nearby homes and the school by canals, open space, setbacks, and extensive buffering like trees and dense shrubs. Both the nearest homes and Saddleview Elementary are about 2,000 feet away from the data center buildings, the equivalent of about 5.5 football fields. Beyond location, the project is planned with efficiency and responsible operations in mind. Water use is often part of the conversation around data centers. This data center will be highly efficient. It is planned to use a closed-loop cooling system, which means water is continuously recirculated rather than consumed and discharged. After startup, most daily water use comes from normal employee needs like restrooms and sinks. At full build-out, the data center is expected to use 5,000 gallons of water per day. By comparison, the surrounding Arden community uses roughly 500,000 gallons per day. In other words, the data center would use a small fraction of the water already used in the area. Another important part of data center operations is energy use. Like other critical infrastructure, this type of facility requires electricity to operate. Due to new state regulations around large power users, all infrastructure, like new power stations or lines, and the cost of the electricity itself needed to serve the data center is funded by the project, not by local residents. That means no added cost on your utility bill. And just as important as power is connectivity. The site is next to existing fiber optic infrastructure, which is essential for secure, high-speed data transmission. Sound is also part of the conversation. The data center is planned to operate quietly. Unlike many older data centers, major equipment will be housed inside enclosed buildings and buffered, helping to minimize sound. Distance, setbacks, berms, and landscaping all help further reduce sound before it ever reaches nearby homes. At the property line, sound levels are expected to be at or below 50 decibels, similar to a typical suburban neighborhood. By the time it reaches surrounding homes, it blends into everyday background sounds. Just as important as what you might hear is what you'll see. The data center has been carefully planned to minimize its visual presence from surrounding areas. Spatial separation plays a key role, combined with trees and landscape buffers that create a natural separation. From nearby roads, homes, and the school, visibility is expected to be limited. The data center architecture will resemble modern office or business facilities. They use neutral colors and a low-profile design. Overall, the campus will be quiet, cohesive, and consistent with the surrounding area. All of these elements are part of a broader focus on responsible planning and operation. The facility will meet or exceed all environmental and safety regulations with systems in place to ensure safe, controlled operations at all times. Beyond the site itself, data centers play an important role at the local, national, and global level. They are part of the nation's critical infrastructure, supporting secure communications, financial systems, emergency response, and data protection. Keeping this infrastructure within the United States also strengthens national security by ensuring sensitive systems and data remain domestic. Locally, the project is expected to expand the tax base, create high-skilled jobs, and generate long-term public benefits. As demand for secure, reliable digital infrastructure continues to grow, projects like this play an important role locally and across the country. Our focus is simple: thoughtful planning, responsible development, and respect for the surrounding community. To learn more and stay informed, visit centralparkcommercecenter.com or follow along on Facebook and Instagram.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Project Manager Ernie Cox to take us through the rest of the presentation. Ernie, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Patrick, and thanks for everybody that's joining. I've had a chance to talk to lots of people over the last 6 months and before that, and particularly the last couple of weeks. So go through this pretty quickly, and then happy to answer questions. So um, I mean, it's interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day. Growing up, I had no connected devices, which tells those of you that are younger how old I am. But now most houses have 17 to 20. If you have kids, you've probably got multiple things connected, and that demand is rapidly increasing throughout the United States. This is also a global competition that we're in. Um, it's a backbone of our economy, just like electricity would have been 40 years ago. Data processing, connectivity, uh, um, it's everywhere. It's everything that we do in business. But also, it's very important for national defense. Um, and cybersecurity. And at least for me, I would prefer that all of the data that is housed and stored and being processed is in the United States rather than somewhere else around the world. Next slide, please. What's here now? For those that have had a chance to come out and visit the property with us, um, uh, heavy industrial today. There's an asphalt plant, concrete batch plant, construction, storage, and staging, the electrical substations and transmission infrastructure, the power plant. Um, it's uh, pretty impactful. Next slide, please. And then what could be built here? Data and information processing, one of the things we're talking about today. Warehouses, we're also talking about that. Manufacturing, contractor yards, recycling facilities. There's a laundry list. If you look at the MUPD zoning with an economic development center, future land use in the Palm Beach County Unified Land Development Code, all of those uses are set out. And what we're proposing is a mix of data and information processing and warehouses on the site. Next slide. A little bit of history. I'm not going to read all this, but we go back to 2016. And at that point, the master plan approved 2,020,000 square feet of EDC uses. That was in the first phases, so not the entire build out of the property. Entire build out is more square footage. First site plan in 2017 was going to be 1.2 million square feet of data and information processing. That was then modified to warehouse and smaller amount of data and information processing. Again, in phase one, in January of last year, we added 64 acres and included the concrete plant and asphalt plant area into the Central Park Commerce Center. And then in December, we actually went before the Zoning Commission. Zoning Commission recommended approval and approved variance. As you know, last week, the Zoning Commission, we were back in front of them with a different plan. They recommended denial, and we're going to be going forward to the Board of County Commissioners on July 15. And so we're working to do, at least from my perspective, to do a better job explaining the project at that public hearing. Next slide, please. What are the changes that have been made? We reduced the intensity total. We certainly reduced the data and information processing. We moved that data and information processing further west, and then changed the plan to do all warehouses on the eastern portion of the property. And then importantly, we'll talk about this a little bit more today, the studies that Patrick mentioned, and these are all available either on the Central Park Commerce Center website, but they're also available on the Palm Beach County website. If you go to the meeting from the Zoning Commission last week, all of these reports are available. Next slide. Again, for those that have been out on the site, you can understand this and you've seen it, but I think it's important to understand the property to the west, which would be left. This particular photo is looking north. To the west, you could see the major transmission infrastructure, the 500 kV lines, the Sugar substation, the Corbett substation, and then the three individual units that make up the West County Energy Center. Closer to the front on the left-hand side, you can see the entranceway with the roundabout and the retention ponds. Moving into the middle of the site out front, there's that concrete batch plant that we talked about. And to the right, the asphalt plant that's operating on the site. And then on the far right-hand side, the kind of whiter area you could see is the area where we're proposing now to do the 5 warehouse buildings. And then to the right of that, there's 400 feet that's owned by the South Florida Water Management District, designated as a wildlife corridor by the county. And then the 500-foot L8 canal, that's a big canal that runs all the way up to Lake Okeechobee. And then there's a 200-foot Arden berm with landscaping on top of it. And then you can see Arden behind it. Next slide, please. This is just again a blow up. You can see the asphalt plant, the concrete plant. Those towers are about 100 feet tall. And then those operations are closest to the project. We're planning on replacing the asphalt plant with 3 one-story concrete tilt wall insulated buildings. That'll be full of computers. And then the concrete plant area is going to be replaced with 3 minor utility buildings. And that's where the cooling equipment for those 3 buildings is going to be housed. That's a closed loop cooling system. And then in the background, you can see the power plant. And that area just next to it, to the right, is where 2 additional data and information processing buildings will be built. Those will be 2-story, and cooling equipment will be housed at the top. Next slide, please. This is the laydown yard. Florida Power and Light has been using that laydown yard to replace the transmission infrastructure, the power poles, to make the electrical grid more resilient. Next slide. And in here again, the West County Energy Center that I talked about. And in the foreground, you could see where the equipment is housed. That's where the 2-story data and information processing buildings are going to be placed. To give you a sense of the height, they're tall stories with the cooling equipment and parapet walls. It'll be about 90 feet. So it will block the view of the cooling towers. It'll block the view of the power plant. It'll block most of the view of the substation that you see on the left. But what you will be able to see the transmission power poles at the top over the building, and you'll be able to see the smokestacks from the West Energy Center. But everything else is going to be replaced with a concrete building wall and block that view. Next slide. These are a few before and after pictures. We've tried to get the computer to show what the buildings will look like. So you can see that on the right, and you can see on the left what's out there today. Next slide, please. This is the asphalt plant on the left, and it's going to be replaced with 3 buildings, modern office park type buildings. Next slide. This is actually the berm and landscape buffer from the Arden, and what we did is we put into the computer the landscaping that's called for in the plan, which is to build a berm and plant trees on top of it and bushes. That's what it'll look like. And then in the background, you can see how those 2-story buildings are going to block most of the power plant. You can see the stacks on top and the substation, and then the 1-story buildings off to the left. Next slide. This is another view. We took the sitting photo from the Arden berm, looking towards the west, and that again is showing that landscape buffer on the project site, and then the buildings behind it. Next slide. Again, different perspective. This is the Arden berm and the trail that's up there, looking southwest. Next slide. Again, same thing, but now looking a little bit lower on the berm. Next slide. This is something I took this photo myself a couple weeks ago. This is further to the north. We had worked with Palm Beach County a number of years ago to do a pilot planting plan um, for the wildlife corridor. And the reason we did that was to find out which trees and shrubs grew best in this soil. The soil is primarily beach sand from 100,000 years ago. And so maybe 120,000. But this shows what could be planted and how it grows in over time. Next slide, please. I know a question came up. It came up at the hearing last week. I'm sure it'll come up again about the daily water usage. Um, and there's a proposed limitation by the county to 100,000 gallons per day total. Give you some perspective, the Arden community uses about 500,000 gallons per day. Um, the data and information processing will be about 5,000, and then the warehouses about 94,000 gallons per day. And so we've worked really hard to design a system that's going to minimize the amount of water that's used for data and information processing. And that water will be provided by Palm Beach County Water Utilities. And we'll have a binding agreement with them for that usage. And we won't be able to go above that binding agreement. Next slide, please. So we did a public health and safety assessment. There were a lot of questions that were asked. We assembled a group of experts, PhDs and medical doctors to actually evaluate the different concerns. And that report is available on the Central Park Commerce Center website. It's got a lot of detailed information, but I'm just going to hit on a few of the high points from the report. Next slide, please. So we talked about student health. Obviously, the elementary school is right to the east. The sound, air quality, heat, traffic, fire safety, and the standards that are applied. Next slide, please. Sound monitoring. So this was a picture on the left of the monitoring equipment, and on the right, the locations of the monitoring. And so one of the things we did first was let's go out and find out what's the background noise today. So before we construct Project Tango, what is the background noise? And what we found is that there's some noise out there existing. One of the biggest noise sources currently is State Route 80 coming on the south side of the property. Next slide, please. And then we did predictive modeling, and there's a report that explains the methodology, the data that was gathered, the equipment that was used, and the modeling. But this particular center was designed by the engineers to direct the sound to the west, towards the power plant, and towards the agricultural areas to the west, and to direct that sound away from the Arden community and Saddleview Elementary. This is just one of the exhibits from that report that shows what we anticipate the sound levels to be. Next slide, please. So question asked to the expert panel is this going to affect classrooms or outdoor learning? And so at the school, the outdoor sound is projected from the Project Tango at 44 dBA. And the existing outdoor sound there today averages about 55. So not only does it meet the guidelines, but the key takeaway is that the projected sound levels from the project, the way it's being designed and the way it's going to be constructed, will be less than today's existing. So the existing outdoor environment is going to stay what it is. Next slide, please. Uh, a lot of questions have been asked about low frequency sound and vibration, and this concern with a low frequency hum. And so this group of experts who've done this around the world evaluated the potential that this site would create that low frequency sound. And again, we're designing it to not create low frequency sound. And their conclusions are that there won't be any expected at the side, at the school or the community. Um, Again, I think it's very important, but those folks have evaluated that, and that report's available for review. Next slide, please. Air quality. Um, I know with some other data centers in other parts of the country, they use backup diesel generators, and those backup diesel generators operate regularly. There's also some data center projects in other parts of the country that use diesel and jet engines for primary power. And those obviously create emissions, make a lot of noise. Um, we're not doing that. So the power to power the data center is going to come from the electrical grid directly through the two substations that I mentioned. Um, but we are proposing to back up some of that power with Tesla Megapacks. They look like big white um, shipping containers. They're completely self-contained, and there will be no diesel backup generators, and there's going to be no emissions from the site. So therefore, no emissions, no effect on air quality, and therefore no health impacts. Next slide, please. Fire safety. Are these battery systems safe? And I think where this comes from is some concerns about electrical car fires, typically when they get immersed in water. I think we all saw some of those videos after the last hurricane with electric cars. And so first, these incidents are pretty uncommon. When they happen, they're certainly publicized a great deal. Um, but the Tesla Megapack is a very advanced system. It'll include heat monitoring. It'll have fire suppression on site. And then our team has worked closely with Palm Beach County Fire Rescue relative to if a fire occurred, what would need to be done. And we're coordinating very closely with all the first responders. So we've also got built into these heat sensors. So we do not anticipate a problem with the batteries. Um, and we've added multiple layers of protection for that. Next slide, please. Heat. Um, I did hear the other day someone has done a study somewhere in the United States that has a pretty significant heat impact. So we asked the team to evaluate that, and the conclusion was that at the cooling buildings themselves, so not the concrete building, including the computers, but where the fans are going to be on the roof. Um, that air temperature is anticipated to be maybe 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit more than it is today, so 1 to 2. So we're adding additional landscaping to reduce that impact, and the we do not anticipate the prevailing wind is generally from east to west. When we have winds from west to east, it tends to be in the cooler months. And the conclusion of the report and the experts is that there's no expected increase from this project at either Saddle View Elementary or the Arden community. Next slide, please. Traffic was a question, and so detailed traffic studies have been conducted, conducted, updated, provided to the county, and the traffic meets all the requirements. Turn lanes have already been installed if at some point in the future there's enough traffic to warrant a signal will be installed at the entrance. And so there's no expected disruption or impact um, beyond the county requirements. It's certainly not to affect the school operations. Next slide, please. So summary with some pictures. No significant noise impacts, no adverse air quality impacts, no measurable heat impacts. The safety standards have all been designed to the industry standards and coordinated, and the school operations and traffic are expected to continue normally. Um, Next slide. Again, just back to the site. This is the before on the left, and this is the after on the right. Next slide. Ready for questions. Hopefully that's helpful, and we'll also make sure that this presentation is available on the website.
All right, thank you, Ernie. We're going to move into the Q&A portion of the webinar. As a reminder, continue to submit questions through the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So the first question, Ernie, we received through the chat, and you kind of touched on it, but I wanted to put a fine point on it. What's the expected traffic load increase on Southern Boulevard?
Yeah, there's I don't have the exact trip numbers that are on in the traffic study, but the specific additional trip numbers that are in the traffic study are below the original comprehensive plan approvals for Southern Boulevard. And those trip numbers are specifically available in the staff report.
Okay, great. Next question. What is the impact of the additional power structure that's needed to be built? Will it be an eyesore? Will it generate noise? Will it limit expansion of future homes?
Okay, so right now the the redesign of the project since December puts an additional electrical substation on the far west side of the property. So just to the south of the two. Um, Actually, can we go back on the slide? I think it'd be helpful to show this. Keep going back. Actually, no. Go back to the one there. I was actually pretty good. Okay. So if you see the three buildings in the front and then the cooling equipment in their buildings behind, right behind that, in the corner, you see the two taller data and information processing buildings, and just to the left of that is an electrical substation. So that electrical substation will be connected to the existing substations across the road. So maybe 150 feet away. Um, and then that power will connect into each of the buildings. And so we do not expect that substation is going to add any more sound to the area, and it'll be connected. We're not proposing any substations on the eastern side of the property.
Okay, got it. Um, all right, next question. How will this project affect the water table, especially during extreme drought conditions?
Okay, yeah, good question is that this project will not have any wells. So there's no wells on site. The water that will be utilized will be provided by Palm Beach County Water Utilities, just like the water that's used for um, the power plant, water that's used for Arden, and water that's used throughout Palm Beach County. And so Palm Beach County Water Utilities has a very detailed set of water supply wells scattered throughout the county where that water goes to the central water treatment plants and then is distributed through pipes. Um, None of those wells are in Arden or east of Arden or um, locally um, significant. They're just not there. They're in other parts of the county where the aquifer is very carefully managed. I think one of the concerns that have been raised by people with me was the effect that this project may have upon water wells in the acreage, because a lot of people in the acreage get their water from wells, and it'll have absolutely no impact because no water is being withdrawn from the superficial aquifer or from the canals near Project Tango.
All right. Thank you for that. So next question, could the potential warehouses, if built, be an additional barrier between the homes and the processor building to ensure privacy for homeowners and create a noise barrier?
Yeah, so is the plan that was presented and being considered in December would have had data and information processing facilities and cooling equipment on that eastern portion of the property that we talked about. And then the new plan is to put warehouses in that location, which will actually act as a further buffer between the Arden community and Saddleview Elementary and the data and information processing. It'll also be a buffer to the existing power plant and transmission infrastructure.
Okay, great. Let's see. When is the cooling water dumped and refilled?
Okay, so the system is designed so that it does not need to be dumped and refilled on any regular basis. Once the water is in, it it stays in. The system is designed so that there are different segments with valves, so that if, for instance, there was a need to replace a valve or to replace a section of pipe, you would turn off the valves to the right and the left of the place that you're going to work on. That water would be removed from the pipe into a temporary container, and then that water would be taken off-site in a truck, and it would be refilled. That specific segment of the system would be refilled. We've also designed into the system containment areas for each of the pieces of the system, and then the ability, if there ever was a failure, the particular segments are segregated so that it's fully contained and there'll be tanks on site. None of that water is going to be discharged into the wastewater treatment plant, and none of that water is going to be discharged into the canals. That water will be pumped into a containment area, into a tank, and then pumped into a truck, and then taken to an offsite facility.
Okay. Follow-up question of that. So, if the facility exceeds its daily water limit, would operations be shut down for the remainder of the day?
Yeah, I think it's less that it would be exceed is there's only a certain amount um, that's allowed. So what happens is the way it's measured is on a gallons per day, and then the average gallons per day with a restriction in terms of how it is. And so the water that's daily use, the daily use water is based upon bathrooms and break rooms and the human beings that are using the building, working there, visiting, and so that goes up and down. So during the night shift, there would be less usage. During the day shift, maybe lunchtime would be higher usage. And so that's very carefully monitored. And we just that's the amount of water that we get. It's important to understand that once the closed loop cooling system is filled up, there's not any daily water use. And so that's the critical path. But we don't anticipate extra bathroom use to exceed those limits.
Okay. So question regarding the report. Could a doctor with a DO degree be added in the list of doctors consulted?
Well, I mean, we haven't had a DO um, on this team. The medical doctor has looked at it. That's probably beyond my technical expertise, but certainly a DO would be qualified to look at potential issues. But we just said work that's been done so far. The folks that are in the report are the ones that put the report together.
Right, and I believe it was MD on the
There's
current
one
report.
MD.
Yes. Um, all right. What are the actual continuous noise levels once the facility is operating 24/7?
Yeah, based on the predictive modeling that's been done, based upon the equipment that's been designed, based upon the buildings, it's anticipated at our property line to be about 45 dBA, which is significantly below not only the requirements, but also significantly below the existing background.
All right. Great. Um, Another one. So how many workers at the data center on a typical work day?
So when we're fully built out, and recognize that we're going to do the first two taller buildings closest to the power plant first, and then the other three buildings. But at full build out, um, between 500 and 600 employees, that will be spread across three shifts. So there'll be three typically 8 to 10 hour shifts throughout the day, and so they all won't be there at the same time. Um, but um, figure 500 to 600 over the five data and information processing buildings. That also includes people that are keeping an eye on and maintaining the closed loop cooling system and the electrical infrastructure.
All right. Let's see. Sorry, I got lost. Will there be any electrical impact to the surrounding community?
No, and this is something that was dealt with significantly by Florida Power and Light as they developed their large load tariff that was recently approved by the Public Service Commission. So FPL, a service provider in this area, um, has been planning for additional data and information processing throughout their service territory um, for the entire time I've been involved in this project. And so um, there's a couple things. One, they're planning for it. Two, there's going to be additional solar and battery backup added to their generation system. Um, and then third, that particular tariff requires large load users like Project Tango to pay not only 100% of their infrastructure costs, so the substations, but also to, hold on one second, got to give a key to somebody. Sorry about that. But also to pay for all their electricity. And part of that tariff that went through the Public Service Commission was to make sure that that does not that um, large load use does not negatively affect either reliability or the rates of the residential customers.
Okay. Let's see. What is the source of the noise generation?
Okay. So I think it's important to understand what could make noise out there beyond the human beings. So the computers themselves don't make much noise, and the computers themselves will actually be inside a building, and the building will be designed with concrete walls and insulation. So the computers could make noise, but they'll be inside a building, and you won't be able to hear them outside. The pumps that pump the water between and the closed loop cooling system and the chillers that and I guess chiller is probably a wrong word. It's not really, it's not, we're not creating frozen freezing water. We're just creating cooler water, kind of like a radiator on a car. Um, we're taking hotter water from the computer to the chiller to then become cooler water, and then it gets pumped back through. Those pumps and chillers do make some noise, which is why we put them inside an insulated building. Um, the other source of potential noise is the fans that will go on the roof. And there are fans that make a lot of noise, and there are fans that make a little bit of noise. And part of that depends upon the fan blade. Part of it depends upon the speed of the fan. Um, and so the fans that have been um, specified for the project are high efficiency fans that generate the least amount of noise. And so those are things that could make noise. We're designing and using equipment that generates the least amount of noise. And then we'll also be buffering the parapet. I talked about parapet walls, buffering those walls to limit, and then planting additional vegetation between between the buildings and the Arden community.
Okay. Um, will this project be built using local labor?
It'll be a mixture. So we anticipate it's about during construction about 1,700 jobs throughout the building of the project. Many of those will be local. We anticipate that as Palm Beach County has grown, you've got a number of significant contractors who are capable of building this building. We've got with some of the industries that are already here, we've got specialized air conditioning and plumbing and electrical, with Florida Power and Light being headquartered in Palm Beach County, and the significant power facilities that they have at Riviera Beach and West County next door. Thankfully, we've already got some of those specialized workers in town. We also anticipate working closely with Palm Beach State College on on technical education so that we can continue to keep local folks local. And that's going to be a big thing. There will be some folks from out of town that are brought in, but our intention is to maximize um, local workers. And then one other thing related to kind of the existing operations out at 20 Mile Bend is we have a lot of employees from the Glades area, the Tri-Cities, so Pahokee, Belglade, South Bay, and we anticipate continuing to do that. Um, really, this is probably more than we need to get into in the webinar, but technical education and technical jobs, there's a lot of really good um, jobs for people in this community, and that's an opportunity for folks that grow up here to stay here. So we're pretty excited about that. Look forward to working with everybody.
Okay. Um, so I'm gonna summarize this next one because it's quite long, but what guarantees will there be that all of the measures regarding water, sound, etc., will remain once it's built and after it's built? Um, uh, what guarantee that if these safety measures fail, and what will be done if when it does happen?
Okay, so let me go. So first, we'll have the conditions of approval or the conditions of approval, and if there's a violation of a condition, then the county will
Ernie,
enforce that.
can I pause real quick? Can you say what a condition of approval is just
Oh,
for
I'm
the,
sorry.
yeah.
So within the existing development approvals, there's a list of conditions that must be complied with, and they relate to everything from traffic to landscaping to water usage, and those are binding requirements that are part of the county approval. And so it's up to us to make sure that we meet all of those conditions and stay in compliance with those conditions. If we do not stay in compliance with those conditions, then the project can be stopped. So there's a process for review, and believe me, just as we've done with the operations we have out here, we don't ever want to be not in compliance with a condition. So that's number one. Number two, when we do the building permitting, there will be additional requirements and conditions that have to be signed off on, not only by our contractor and our engineer, but also by the county building department as these things are built. And then conditions that are being discussed in terms of monitoring related to sound and related to water usage. Those will also have compliance mechanisms in them. Um, so we've not had any problem with the operations on the site to date with those types of conditions, and we don't expect we're going to be making a very significant investment to build and operate this property. We want to make sure it's built and operated properly.
Okay. Um, so this one is another long one, so I'm gonna summarize a bit. How do you respond to concerns that nearby home values are already declining because of the proposed project?
Okay. And I mean, I've looked at this and talked to a number of different people in the business. The project has not been built. And so I think what's if there are impacts on the homes, it's been because of the some of the statements that are out there. So let's just take a simple one, noise. Um, we've designed the project to not have a noise impact on Arden. Just keep it focused with noise. So, but there's been a lot of information out there on social media and in public statements that this is going to be really noisy. And so, to the extent that has caused an impact, I think it's because of um, the media, social media, and discussion. Um, my strong belief is that this will not only not cause a negative impact once constructed, but once we're able to prove that it's not going to have a noise impact, it's not going to raise the temperature, it's not going to use a lot of water, it's not going to negatively impact the neighboring community, then that'll go away.
Okay. Um, who is this being built for? Companies like Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, or Google?
Okay, so we've, and I know some people are unhappy with this, but there are very detailed non-disclosure agreements that have been signed and have to be complied with. So I can't answer the question as to which companies may be partners in the project. I just can't answer that question. Um, and um, but what I can say is that um, the PBA Holdings ownership, the PBA Holdings is going to stay involved in the project as it moves through construction and into operation. And those folks have been involved in this particular piece of property since the late 1990s, and will continue to be so.
Okay. Um, so there's a follow-up question. I'm trying to understand how to ask this. What happens to the facility during a disaster? Say hurricane comes through and something like that. Where will we go from there? I mean, like, is this resilient? How will it work? Things like that.
So yeah, and that's something, I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars of construction and equipment. Um, so first of all, the property itself is 23 feet above sea level. So the potential that there could be flooding um, is extremely, extremely small. It's higher than State Route 80. It's higher than the property around it. Um, the same sand that is under this property is the same sand that's under Arden. So both of these communities are highly resilient to the potential of flooding, and have modern stormwater systems involved. The second thing is the electrical infrastructure will be very robust, and very resilient from a potential storm. The buildings themselves will be concrete tilt wall buildings designed to withstand Category 5 hurricanes. And so this site will be very resilient. We anticipate it'll continue operating um, through a hurricane.
Okay. And so we had another question that was very long, so I'm going to summarize a little bit. What happens to the data center if technology changes significantly? Chips get better and better every year. What happens, you know?
Well, I think what we're designing, and I think I'm not a computer expert, but I think it's called Moore's Law, where the chips get faster every 3 years. Um, we anticipate that the computers inside the building will be replaced every 3 to 4 years. And so as the newer technology comes in, the chips will be replaced, the computers will be replaced. If a newer, better fan comes in, we'll replace the fan with a newer, better fan. Um, uh, I know we've got the potential that people could put data and information processing on their house, um, but I always I'm based on all the information that we're seeing, there's still going to be a need for um, hardened, connected um, cloud computing, and we'll adapt to it. I think the biggest thing from our perspective is designing the building so that the insides of it can be updated as technology improves, but not have to go back and redo the building. And again, each time we do that, we should be able to be more efficient.
Hmm. Okay. We have time for probably two more questions. So has a third party been utilized to check the predictions and calculations for this project?
Yeah, one of the things we did, so if you look at, we had sound studies done by Jacobs, who is our engineers and designers for the project, and they did their work, and then the independent panel of experts that did the health and safety report also reviewed the Jacobs analysis and provided their opinions.
Okay. So along those same lines, where are the? Oh wait. Well, yeah, sure. No, hold on. That's a different question. Sorry, guys. How were potential impacts of the nearby elementary school, including students with autism, evaluated?
Yeah, so we had the conversation with primarily the health experts on that. And the real issue comes down to whether there's an impact off of the property. And so whether it's someone that might have autism or somebody that might have PTSD, somebody that might have specific health issues. Um, the specific health issues that an individual may have to be affected by something. And so the conclusion reached by those folks is that if we are not having a noise impact, a sound impact, a low frequency sound or vibration impact, or a light impact or an emissions impact, those things that affect human beings, particularly those human beings that may have additional sensitivities, um, then there would not be a negative impact. And so the focus has been on how do you make sure we don't have an offsite impact that might affect anybody, but particularly might affect somebody that has certain medical issues to begin with.
Hmm. All right. Well, that's our time, folks. I appreciate everyone coming out. Ernie, I appreciate you answering all those questions. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to submit them through the portal on the Central Park Commerce Center website. And yeah, I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.